स्वामिन् नमस्ते नतलोकबन्धो कारुण्यसिन्धो पतितं भवाब्धौ मामुद्धरात्मीयकटाक्षदृष्ट्या ऋज्व्यातिकारुण्य सुधाभिवृष्ट्या स्वामिन्नमस्ते 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 जन्मानेकशतैः सदादरयुजा भक्त्या समाराधितो भक्तैर्वैदिकलक्षणेन विधिना सन्तुष्टैष स्वयं साक्षात् श्री गुरुरूपमेत्य कृपया दृग्गोचरः सन् प्रभुः तत्त्वं साधु विबोध्य तारयति तान् संसारदुःखार्णवात् तत्त्वं साधु विबोध्य तारयति तान् संसारदुःखार्णवात्। जय गुरु, जय गुरु, जय गुरु। See, I am going to tell you about some small programs or ceremonies which happen in our ashram every day. In our ashram, apart from the regular prayers, satsangs, and talking to Pujya Swamiji now and then, meeting the devotees, meeting some of the village people, we have a very special program every day which is called Pushpa Samarpanam. And following the Pushpa Samarpanam, there is another very beautiful program which is called Prabhata Rashmi. Swamiji himself has given that name. In Pushpa Samarpanam, some of you who have come to our ashram and who have seen our Vigyan Bhavan hall, we all come and assemble here. And in the morning, this hall is cleaned, Swamiji's chair is kept. Then we keep it ready for the program. As you understand from the name, Pushpa Samarpanam means offering of flowers. Offering of flowers where? We offer flowers at the feet of our Gurudev, Pujya Swamiji. So as we keep the hall ready, we also pluck flowers from our garden. There is various kinds of flowers. And there is tulasi. So flowers and tulasis are collected. And this collection also we try to do with lot of devotion, seeing to it that the flowers are handled properly, they do not get damaged. And after the flowers are collected, some of the devotees, they take the seva of sitting together and cleaning the flowers. And all this we are supposed to do with a devotional feeling in the mind. When we go to the trees, we think of the divine who has created this whole universe, the trees, the flowers, and who has blossomed in various flower branches and has given us the opportunity to pluck those flowers to be offered at the feet of our Sadguru, the Sadguru who is our living God. So the collection of flowers and then cleaning the flowers, after that is done, with lot of tenderness. I don't know whether I'm able to express with this word tenderness how we do it. Every flower petal should look fresh and nice. Nothing should be damaged. Nothing should look as though they have been wilted. And it is kept in a vessel. Sometimes some devotees who have the art of decoration, they arrange the flower petals in such a manner that the top is a rangoli with various colored flower petals. It looks very beautiful and shows the devotional feeling that those devotees must be having while making this flower rangoli in the vessel itself. And after everything has been done, by the time all assemble here, the ashramites, the resident devotees who have come to stay, some come for few days, some come for long stays, and also some devotees who come for the day, just to have the darshan of Pujya Swamiji, do pranam to him and take blessings. So all assemble in this hall at that particular time. I'm trying to draw a picture in your mind, whoever is listening. And I don't know whether through speech the ambience can be carried to you. The whole place becomes very divine with the presence of the devotees. Till Swamiji comes and enters the hall, all devotees chant a namavali, Om Namah Sadashivaya, Om Namo Narayanaya. This is composed by Pujya Swamiji himself, and he says out of everything, he likes to hear this chant continuously. So, in the chorus chanting of Om Namah Sadashivaya, Om Namo Narayanaya, Pujya Swamiji enters the hall and he takes his seat. As he takes his seat, one volunteer or other requests the assembled devotees to stand in queues, a queue for the female devotees and another queue for the male devotees. And then, stopping the namavali, we start chanting shlokas on the Guru. We first chant this shloka. Janmane kashatai sadadarayuja bhaktya samaradhito bhaktair vaidika lakshanena vidhina santushtaisha swayam साक्षात् श्री गुरुरूपमेत्य कृपया दृग्गोचरसन् प्रभुः तत्त्वं साधु विबोध्य तारयति तान् संसारदुःखार्णवात् तत्त्वं साधु विबोध्य तारयति तान् संसारदुःखार्णवात्. I think I should explain the meaning also of this shloka and then proceed. It is a very beautiful shloka composed by Shankaracharya in his composition Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta Sara Sangraha. It says, when a devotee worships God for many hundreds of lives, janma aneka shataihi, and he worships according to the Vedic injunctions in a very pious and devotional manner, with lot of respect and love, then what happens? Santushtas Isha Swayam. God Himself becomes pleased. The devotee worships and worships, and our idol or image which we worship, it remains in front of us, it cannot speak to us. When God becomes pleased with the worship of a devotee, He then feels that now something should be done for this devotee. So, being pleased, what He does? Sakshat Shri Guru Rupametya Kripaya Driggocharasan. He takes the form of the Guru, a human form, and he comes in front of the devotee. Driggochara. That is, the devotee is now able to see a person who has realized God, who is God Himself, and is able to ask his doubts, his questions. Till now, when the worship was only to an idol or image, the image would not be able to speak or give any reply if the devotee had a doubt or any question. Now, God comes in the form of Guru, and the disciple or the devotee is able to talk to him. That is what, by being pleased, God makes Himself available to the devotee in a human form as a Guru. And what does He do then? He then Kripaya, Sakshat Shri Guru Rupametya Kripaya, by compassion, by mercy for this devotee, He talks to the devotee and awakens him to the supreme truth by talking about the spiritual wisdom and takes him across the worldly afflictions. Tattvam sadhu vibodhya. Vibodhya, he talks about the spiritual wisdom very well, explains to him, and makes the devotee not only understand the spiritual truth, he also guides him to attain it and be stable in it, so that the devotee is able to cross the worldly afflictions by knowing that I am the self and I am not the body. I am the imperishable, changeless, eternal, and unaffected self. And I am not this changeful body, mind, and intelligence. So, we start with this shloka. Why? Because we are in the association of our living God, our Guru, Sadguru, and we are getting an opportunity. We have all assembled here to offer our pranams at His holy lotus feet. We chant this sloka first, then one sloka which is particularly composed on Pujya Swamiji. It was composed by a devotee who is no more, long, long back. And then we start chanting the Guru slokas from Guru Gita. If many devotees are there, Guru Gita slokas get over. Then we chant Gurvashtakam, which is Shankaracharya's composition. And then we end with two slokas again from Shankaracharya's composition, Yatraiva Yatraiva Mano Madiyam. And the last sloka that we end with is again from Guru Gita, which ends with Sadgurum Tam Namami. So you can understand throughout this whole program what has happened. Swamiji has taken seat, flowers are kept ready, and queues have been formed. Then one brahmacharini gives me the flower pot. I sprinkle water on the flowers to purify them. And then, as and when the devotees come, one male, one female, it goes like this. Whoever comes near me, I give some flower petals along with tulasi. And each devotee slowly walks towards Swamiji's seat. They offer the flowers at Pujya Swamiji's holy feet and they offer their pranam and they go back to their place. This is Pushpa Samarpanam. You can understand, while all this is going on, there is chorus chanting of all these slokas in beautiful meters. And the whole hall, the minds of the devotees gets filled with devotion. The whole ambience is surcharged with devotion. And at the end, when everybody's turn is over, one devotee is chosen every day to take the flowers back from Pujya Swamiji's feet, to free Pujya Swamiji's feet from the heap of flowers. One devotee is chosen, and he then is called, he washes his hands again and comes, and slowly, amidst the chanting of the shlokas which are still going on, he takes the flowers, puts them back in the pot where the flowers originally were there. Then with a cloth beautifully designed and sometimes embroidered cloth beautifully made by devotees, that devotee will wipe the holy feet of Pujya Swamiji and then he goes back. And then comes the time for which all will be waiting for some time. What is that? Then starts the Prabhata Rashmi. You know, this program started long back, maybe about 30 years back or 32 years back. And when we started this, we always felt that Pujya Swamiji, if he could say something to the devotees, the assembled devotees, the ashramites especially. Sometimes there are only the ashramites, if no visitors are there. But he should tell us something which will be the message of the day. And so we had requested, and Swamiji started talking. And he named it Prabhata Rashmi, the morning rays. And what does he talk about? He talks about the knowledge, the supreme truth, about devotion, about imbibing spiritual qualities, about disciplines to acquire sattva-guna, and about introspection. And everything is focused on how a seeker, the assembled seekers, can grow in their sadhana. All who are assembled here, they like this program. Those who come from outside, And those who are here, those who arrange this program, actually one has to imbibe the devotion, one has to imbibe the sublimity and purity that this program gives us. Then only the seeker or devotee will be benefited by this program. Now, as this program started, Pushpa Samarpanam and Prabhati Rashmi, and Prabhati Rashmi, we started recording, audio recording. And we were finding that they were so useful for the seekers of truth. We felt that these should be reached to our devotees also who are not able to come to the ashram. So we started transcribing them, and then each month we started publishing in our English magazine Vichara Setu. Now every month, whatever is published in Vichara Setu, it is translated in Malayalam for Vichara Sarani and in Hindi Vichara Setu. So this is how the whole thing started. And before I thought that, very soon what happened is many were published and we had many published material. So many people were wanting these collections to be brought out in the form of books. So the first volume of Prabhat Rashmi was published. Like that, there are 3 volumes. There are many unpublished ones, many untranscribed ones, and I think that those which are unpublished but edited or transcribed and edited, those must be there in the website. The audios must be there. Even the transcriptions must be there in the website, is what I feel. If not all, at least many. Now, I very often read this Prabhat Rashmi. These are very small topics of great interest, great value for any seeker. And in this Prabhat Rashmi, when Swamiji talks, already the whole ambience is full of devotion. Especially, when some of the devotees who take flowers from Pujya Swamiji's feet, they feel that they are chosen that day, they shed tears of joy. So when the whole function is attended with so much of devotion, in that ambience, Swamiji talks on some subject or other. He talks in a meditative mood. He closes his eyes, and as if he is talking from remaining in his self within him, he talks. That takes us to a very sublime state of the mind, right in the morning. So I have a habit of reading these Prabhat Rashmis, especially the first volume I have read many, many times. And at times, in Delhi and Jamshedpur, when we have gone for our programs, the Jnana Yajna annual programs, there have been sessions where I have read from the Prabhat Rashmi and explained them further. I found that it becomes more clear, and many devotees have told me that it is very, very useful. Why don't you take such sessions? So I thought that I will start such a session, and whatever time I get, I will try to read some of these, and all of us will read and listen. You are listening and I will tell. And let us see what Swamiji has to tell us on different aspects of sadhana. Before I start, I want to read the preface to the first volume. This preface, which is written by Swami Nirvisheshananda Tirthaji, Nutan Swamiji, it has been given, this preface has come in every volume, but it will be very nice to read it. It is given the heading, "The dawn became luminous." That is, the dawn, the early morning hours, it has become luminous with what? With the spiritual knowledge that Swamiji has spoken to us. So he has written, an ashram is a Guru Sannidhi. For worshipping God or any deity, one may go to a temple, but one comes to an ashram to live and grow in the close association of a Mahatma. This is what the first shloka is. We go to temples, we may have our own shrines at home, and we keep images and idols, and we worship. That is a different kind of worship, and we do it with a lot of bhakti. But coming to an ashram is to be in the close association of a Mahatma, a Sadguru, who has realized God, realized the self, and who lives the life thereafter, remaining in that realization as a Jivan Mukta, who has become God himself. That is why it is said, Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine. Ishvara, Bhagavan, Guru and oneself, they are the same. Only in their form they are different. It is also said, see the first sloka of Guru Gita, we all chant, all know, Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. That is, when you have a Guru, all the deities, all the gods or goddesses that you were fond of, you were worshipping, they all merge into the Guru. Guru becomes everything. Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara and everything. So to an ashram, one comes to be in the close association of such a Mahatma who is so holy, so pure, so much full of wisdom. When we look at him, he may look like just a human being, but he is the divine being. He is like a god. A Mahatma does not need anything for himself. When a Mahatma, a God-realized person, he has renounced everything. He has no desire, he has no possessiveness, he has no ego. He knows that God is everything, self is everything. He is not different from God. Everything is created by God. So he has no want. Whatever comes, he accepts. Whatever goes, he lets it go. So he doesn't need anything for himself. If at all, he impatiently wants to share his treasure with as many as would be able to receive it. He doesn't need anything for himself. Actually, after realization, a Mahatma, a Sadguru, a realized soul will just live somewhere. But seekers of truth, they find him out. They start asking him questions. They start living with him, start serving him. By himself, he may not even look for food. But there are so many people who understand who these Mahan people are. They bring food for them. start serving them, bring them the things which they need. Slowly they make a kutia for him. Slowly many devotees start coming and listening to him. And for the need of the devotees to come and go, the ashram around the Sadguru grows. This is how an ashram grows. Otherwise, when a Sadguru or a Mahatma lives, he lives in a very, very humble manner, in a very small kutil, sometimes under the tree. It is devotees who look after him. That is why our Swamiji always says that every drop of blood in his cell, it is the devotees who have given him food and nourishment. Nothing belongs to him. But a Sadguru or a devotee who, wherever he is, he impatiently waits for seekers of truth to come to him so that what he has realized and attained, he can distribute that to the people who are seeking that truth. That is what he wants. He only wants that good people should surround him, those who seek truth should be near him, and they should be able to take the knowledge which he has attained. So, all practices and activities in an ashram are pivoted on interactions with the Mahatma, listening to his words of wisdom and experience, serving him and his mission in all possible ways, expressing devotion and gratitude towards him through spontaneous, sublime acts and observances. So, in an ashram, when the Guru is there, and if some devotees are nearby, how is the ashram routines set up then? You must start listening to him, his words of wisdom, his experiences, whatever he has to say. Sometimes he will talk about the wisdom, the highest wisdom. Sometimes he will guide us to take away the impurity of our minds, lethargy of our mind, the constrictions of our mind. Sometimes he will make us feel that there is God and God everywhere. So, everything, all the interactions are pivoted around the Mahatma, the Guru, and listening to his words of wisdom and experiences, serving him and his mission. Whatever mission he has taken up, all that, like in our ashram, right from the beginning, Swamiji had taken up the mission of publishing a journal, going and giving lectures in different places as Jnana Yajnas. And so many other activities have now come in. So the devotees who stay near him, who stay here with him at his feet, and those who come and go, many of them, they serve in this mission. In the ever unfolding life of a seeker, the temple practices lose importance as soon as he takes refuge under a Mahatma or a Sadguru. A seeker or a devotee who was given to going to temples and worship and was very devotedly performing that worship, that temple going becomes secondary now. It drops off because he finds something else which fills his mind, that is coming to the Sadguru. As long as he was worshipping in the temple, as is told by Shankaracharya, the idol was not able to talk and give instructions. If a devotee had fear in the mind, had misery in the mind, however much the devotee would tell God in front of his chosen idol or cry when he is under misery, afflicted by misery, the idol was not able to tell him anything to take away the fear, grief, anxiety, and anything. But when that devotee comes in the association of the Sadguru, Sadguru is able to give the solution to avoiding grief, avoiding misery, and everything. So that is why he feels like coming again and again in the close association of the Sadguru. That is what happens. With the spiritual growth of devotees and disciples, the daily routine in Narayanashrama Tapovanam also underwent a natural change. The name of our ashram is Narayanashrama Tapovanam. As many of you know, maybe somebody who will listen to this for the first time, you may not know. Our ashram is called Narayanashrama Tapovanam. And here our Gurudev is Swami Bhumananda Tirtha. This ashram is in Kerala, Thrissur. It's Thrissur district, very near to the Thrissur city. So, the daily routines that we had earlier, to bring in the routine of Pushpa Samarpanam and Prabhata Rashmi, which generally takes about 45 minutes, half an hour to 45 minutes. If there is a very big rush like Guru Purnima, maybe sometimes 1 hour. So we had to bring about some changes in our routine. So with the spiritual growth of devotees and disciples, the daily routine in Narayanashrama Tapovanam also underwent a natural change. A natural change. Mark this word. It was a natural change. It was necessary at that time. The morning Pushpa Samarpanam, flower offering, at the feet of Pujya Swamiji, accompanied by soulful chorus chanting of profound shlokas on Guru Tattva, was introduced by Ma in December 1995. Introduced by Ma is written, I am not remembering, I think it was a discussion, and then we told Swamiji that we want to introduce this session, and Swamiji agreed. And it was in December 1995. The purifying and inspiring spell of the sublime function in the serene morning hours touched all the participants. We, however, felt that the program remained incomplete without few words of wisdom from Pujya Swamiji. The problem was to find some time from the prevailing routine. So whatever routines were there in the morning, we had to take some time out from it. Somehow it got started during the 1996 Guru Purnima retreat, with Pujya Swamiji speaking a few words of guidance at the conclusion of Pushpa Samarpanam. Now I am remembering it. So from 1995 December we started. We wanted Pujya Swamiji to say a few words in the early morning hours, but the routines that prevailed, we could not get some more time for Prabhat Rashmi. But we started it with Swamiji's consent in 1996 Guru Purnima and retreat time, when many devotees from far and wide had come to participate in the Guru Purnima and retreat. The profound words on sadhana, like the effulgent morning rays, would often illuminate many a dark corner in the listeners' minds. As I told you, Swamiji started talking unlike his lectures. In his lectures, Swamiji is very vibrant, very powerful, very forceful. But here, he sits quietly, closing his eyes, and starts talking the deepest truth. And these words of the Supreme Wisdom, these words, as if they were torchlight shining in the dark corners of the minds of the seekers, picking up the impurities and inspiring them to introspect and become pure. The profound words on sadhana, like the effulgent morning rays, would often illuminate many a dark corner in the listeners' minds. At other times, like deep whispers from eternity, the words would create a meditative mood in the listeners and take them straight to the taintless sky of soul experience. It was not only guiding for purification of the mind, which is necessary for self-realization, realization of the soul, the self. Sometimes he would talk on the self in such a manner that we will feel that we are transported to that state of soul experience. We could feel, I am the self. I am the soul. I am reading from what has been written by Nutan Swamiji as the preface. The words would create a meditative mood in the listeners and take them straight to the taintless sky of soul experience. The benefit of such a session was immediately realized by all, and the ashram routine was modified accordingly. It was started on Guru Purnima day, Guru Purnima time, and the benefit was understood. So we immediately changed our morning routines so that Pushpa Samarpanam, including Prabhati Rashmi, became a part of our everyday routine. In those days, actually, we used to have the Pushpa Samarpanam at 7 o'clock in the morning, soon after the prayers were over. And 7 o'clock means early morning, and we used to have it in our old building, in the veranda, open veranda. We could see the plants and the trees and the flowers, the squirrels and the birds and the butterflies, and in the midst of that we would be chanting Guru Shlokas, Guru Vandana, and offering flowers, and then sitting quietly to be instructed to the soul experience. Nowadays, because of Swamiji's age and health condition and many other factors, we are having it much later in the day. And we who have experienced those days of early morning Prabhat Pushpa Samarpanam, sometimes we miss that atmosphere. Then he writes, soon the ashramites desired to share these luminous dawns with other seekers and devotees, and thus started the series Prabhata Rashmi, Morning Rays, in our monthly magazine Vichar Setu. The present volume is a natural culmination of this effort. The talks had to be edited to meet the requirements of a written presentation. At the same time, to maintain the natural tone and the flow, the language at most places has been kept verbatim. Of course, part of the fragrance is lost because the voice, mood, and atmosphere cannot be reproduced in print. So this has been written, a few more lines are there. We shall feel fulfilled if this publication inspires the earnest seekers in the essential spiritual sadhana of self-transformation and help them walk confidently on the path of purity, expansion, and enlightenment. Actually, I tell many people to read this book. You can open anywhere. Very small pieces are there. And everything is related to one's own self. As soon as you read it, you will feel sublime, sublimity, purity, and enlightenment, expansion of the mind. So I thought that in these sessions, I will try to read some of these Prabhat Rashmis and explain further, and it will be a joint thing. The book is there. You may read it yourself, and then if you listen to these talks also, you can go back to the book and see how beautiful the book is. There are 3 volumes now, as I said. Many more are unpublished. Actually, Swamiji has talked so much, given so many lectures. We have got, I don't know, huge treasure as our content, but we have not been able to publish so much, but we are trying to put in our website slowly. So today I will read one Prabhati Rashmi, which has been given the title Sublimity. We use the word sublimity quite often. What is this sublimity? Sublimity, purity, expansion, enrichment, enlightenment, and devotion. We use, and we feel also. Purity we feel, enlightenment we feel, devotion we feel. What are these? What is this word sublimity? When we go to temple, when we do our worship, when we don't want anything sitting in front of the idol or just in a room, in a corner, we think of God or think of the self, not expecting anything. At that time we feel sublime and pure. When we look at nature, the nature's beauty, the nature's various creations, we feel sublime. We feel the expansion. Now, what has Swamiji spoken about sublimity? This whole of Prabhat Rashmi and most of it, Swamiji has tried to tell the seekers, just imagine the scene, It is just like imagining the scene of Yoga Vasishtha Ramayana. I am talking to you about Prabhat Rashmi, and before that the Pushpa Samarpanam, which has taken place. The ambience you must try to feel in your mind, in your heart, and feel it. Feel the purity, feel the sublimity, feel the divinity, and in your mind's eye, see that Swamiji is sitting and he is talking to some devotees and seekers who are sitting in front of him, eagerly listening to what Swamiji is speaking on. Swamiji has, in most of the Prabhati Rashmis, tried to tell us that self and self is everywhere. Divinity is everywhere. God is everywhere. At every time, in everything, divinity is there. And there is no differentiation between godliness and worldliness. If God is the same everywhere, all pervading, then the world where we are active, this activity also is an extension of the self. Through all his talks, I think all the time, every time, even now, he is trying to tell us only that. And that is what a seeker should feel, understand, assimilate, and live. So, these are Prabhatrishmis of the time, what I'm reading now is 6th June 1997. And you will find that relentlessly, what he has talked at that time, relentlessly he has been talking over and over and over again. To the same, sometimes to the same people over and over again, to people who are coming newly to them. He doesn't stop. He just wants to say, and that is what a Sadguru does. Sadguru tells, as it is said in Vivekachudamani, Ma Bhaishta, don't fear. There is a way. I will take you across all kind of worldly afflictions. My dear children, affliction is there in every human being. There may be huge ones, there may be subtle ones, but afflicted we remain, anxious we remain, fearful we remain. We feel constricted, limited. And whole spiritual journey is to open the knots of constriction, and become expanded like the sky which is boundaryless, ocean which is boundaryless. So, on 6th June 1997, Swamiji said this. There is lot of emphasis on studies. This is a little preface given to sublimity. What Swamiji spoke, just before that, a little preface is given that during that time, the ashram atmosphere had undergone a perceptible change, primarily because the presence of all the ashramites who were staying at that time and who wanted to do wholesome sadhana and also do service. Lot of time and effort was being given to ensure that the seekers learn to make all their activities a sadhana. That is, not only listen, but in the ashram we have to do lot of work. You know, that is a time, 1997, that time, whom all you see now in the ashram, those who come now, they were not there. Swamiji was there, Muthu Swamiji, myself, and maybe one or two more. Ashram was very small. It was just like a Guru Griha, abode of the Guru. Few people would come to stay, sometimes long stays. As you understand and you may remember, those days travel was not that easy. Like people travel a lot these days. Train services are good, air services are good, bus services are good. So people travel. Those days travel was not that common. So during Guru Purnima and retreat, many people used to come. And throughout the year, sometimes some devotees would come for very long stays. So at that time, whoever were there, they were all sadhana oriented and wanted to do service as well as sadhana. Actually speaking, those days, we did not have so many workers as you see now. So we had to do a lot of work ourselves. Cleaning, mopping, watering the plants, cleaning up the kitchen, winding up the kitchen, many of the things. So, seva was one important factor, and everybody wanted to do seva, and through seva wanted to do sadhana. That is, work and sadhana should not be something different to each other. Through work we should do sadhana. That is, while working also, we should be thinking of spirituality through our thought, speaking. Also, we should not forget that I am a seeker. interaction and action, we should not feel or we should not forget that I am a seeker. Swamiji used to always tell us, your first identity is you are a seeker. You have had your identities like a girl will have, I am a daughter first, I am a student, or when she gets married, I am a wife. When she becomes a mother, I am a mother now, grandmother now. So these are the identities. Similarly for boys, son, then husband, then father, then grandfather. Like this, so many identities are there. Neighbors, we are neighbors. Now, Swamiji says that when you become a spiritual seeker, your first identity should be you are a seeker. Seeker of what? Seeker of the spiritual knowledge. Seeker of the supreme reality. Seeker of the supreme truth. And when you are a seeker, your behavior, your interaction, your thoughts, your speech should be according to your identity. Like a daughter is there. A daughter has to have a daughter-like behavior to the parents, a sister-like behavior to the brothers and sisters. When she becomes a wife, she must have wifely behavior to the husband and a daughter-in-law like behavior to the in-laws. Nobody has to tell us. We just take the roles and start behaving like this. When people are not able to behave like this, then comes the problem. So here, when we take to spirituality, we come to a guru and we start having interest in spirituality, and we know that there is a truth, ultimate truth, that I am the self, I am the changeless one. I am not this changeful one, of this body, mind, intelligence, constantly undergoing changes. Some days I am sad, some days I am very happy, some days I am feeling lethargic, some days I am very vibrant and very brisk in all my activities. Why these changes come? Is there anything permanent? Is there anything changeless? Yes, your real identity is you are changeless. Hold on to that and then act. So, Swamiji always tells your first identity, when you understand that you can attain this truth, it is your real nature. You are the self. You are always the self. You will never be anything other than the self. Only thing, by mistaken identity with the body, mind, etc., you start feeling I am the body. So, you tread this spiritual path, the journey, and let this knowledge become stable in you that you are the self. I am that self. And when you know that if I can hold on to this, then what will happen? Whatever afflictions are there will be beyond it. So your seeker identity should come in front. Now, any time the people who come near a Sadguru, whether they are near in an ashram or whether they are staying at home, in various professions they are, and the ashramites are also doing a lot of work which is necessary for the ashrams running as well as the mission which the Guru has taken up. We have to work always thinking that I am a seeker and I must have seeker-like qualities. So what is the seeker-like quality? To be constantly aspiring for divinity. Divinity should surround us. Divinity in thought. Divinity in speech. Divinity while we act. Divinity when we interact and behave. How to get it? So, Swamiji has talked about what are these, what is divinity, what is sublimity, what are the disciplines for attaining them. So here, in 1997, some people were here. At that time, who had come here but they were staying here. Lot of emphasis was given on studies. Classes were being held. Perfection in service. So whatever seva one does, one must do it with perfection, without any prejudice that, oh, X has been given that work, I like that work, but I was not given. I have been given a work which I don't like, or it is not very important. No prejudice, no preference should be there. Perfection in service. Whatever work has been given, do it with perfection. That is divinity. Do it with a feeling of worship. Feel blessed that some work has been given to you which is a drop maybe in the running of this abode of the Guru. Or when you are in the house, you should think, God has made me stay in the house. Whatever I do, I should think I am serving as His instrument. Suppose in the ashram, people are here, not much big work has been given. Even when after the Prabhat Rishmi is over, everybody gets up. Many devotees I have seen, they take the seva of, stacking the chairs gently in a stack of 4, very nicely. That is a seva. But it should not be just a piece of work every day. Every day you do it. You know that after the satsangs or Prabhat Rishmi has been over, the chairs have to be stacked. If you only think that, then it will not be a seva with spiritual attitude. While doing it, you must feel that I am also doing a part of this organization or the abode where the Guru lives. I am also doing a little part which I can do and feel sublime inside. Sublimity has to be generated from one's own inside. If you do the things just like that, doing one work and thinking of something else, you will never get sublimity. Whichever work it is, say folding a cloth, you do it very well. Think that I am been given this job. Maybe in a temple, I am asked to keep things properly. How I will feel to have got a work which is very holy and divine. That sublime feeling should be generated from one's own within. So emphasis was given to make all their actions a sadhana. And emphasis was on studies, perfection in service, attention, and integrity in living together. When we live together, that lot of clashes come. Differences of opinions will come. So we have to be always accepting others' views, shortcomings, others' nature, and that is what is spirituality. How we can do it? If we can keep this thought that God is everywhere, the same self is everywhere. And above all, preserving the austere sublimity of the atmosphere under all circumstances. That is, while you move around, have a sublime feeling, whether you are in the ashram or you are in your home. Your mind should always dwell in that sublimity, dwell in that divinity. How will you do it? Not think of past, present, not becoming blameful, not becoming critical, not becoming judgmental, not thinking and imagining that, oh, what will be in the future. Think of the expansion that everywhere God is and God, rely on God. So, then comes Swamiji's talk. This is a little preface which has been given. So Swamiji says, truly speaking, spiritual or devotional life is a life lived in the heart, mind, and intelligence. When I say intelligential, I mean something absolutely different from intellectual, as the word is usually understood. See, we use the word intellectual, that is the intellect. We have intellect, we apply it in many things. We say intelligence also. But here Swamiji uses the word intelligence in a different sense. And he says that spiritual and devotional life is a life lived in the heart. That is, the heart should be very rich with emotions, sensitivity, feeling for others, feeling of sacrifice for others, loving others. So lived in the heart, mind and intelligence. And mind should be pure and intelligence should be sharp and subtle. It should be illuminated by the knowledge of the self. Intelligence alone, when we hear, when we read, we listen to the lectures, we are constantly listening that our natural identity is I am the self. So you understand with the intelligence. And intelligence should be such illuminated in such a way. It should have so much of stability not to fall from that knowledge. And when intelligence understands it, it influences the mind to know about the self, so that the mind can be restrained from going behind the senses which take you to destruction. Then he says, when I say intelligential that I have read, in the intelligential pursuit, the effort and emphasis are to generate sublimity and purity. My dear children, what did Swamiji say? He is not using the word intellectual. He is using the word intelligential. In the intelligential pursuit, the effort and emphasis are to generate sublimity and purity. A pursuit with the intelligence which does not give rise to a simultaneous or consequent feeling of sublimity and freedom, purity and expansion is merely an intellectual exercise. My dear children, this is very, very important. I don't know, while reading, how many of you have marked this? We are reading, we are listening, we are understanding by our intelligence. You may call it intellect. But while doing so, if you have not applied the intelligence so that whatever you are grasping, it's not bringing about a feeling of sublimity in you, a purity in you, an expansion in you, then it is remaining as an intellectual knowledge alone. It is not bringing about any change in your personality. It is not bringing about any change in your personality. So, when we are reading these spiritual things, spiritual books say, or listening, now there are so many lectures on YouTube. You are listening. Many of you listen and listen and listen. It's so good, actually. In our times, we never had these opportunities. We could only read books. That too, books were very rare. I used to read the Ramakrishna Kathamritam, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, in the original Bengali. And that is written by M, in Bengali, Ma, the alphabet Ma, Sri Ma. And he used to note down the discussions or Upadeshas which Sri Ramakrishna Dev gave when he would sit with devotees in Dakshineshwar or in some devotee's house, the conversations which took place, how in those days without any recorder, he has recorded it in his mind. He was not writing at that time. He used to write it later. He was a teacher. How he found time, and from his memory he wrote. It would, if you read the actual Bengali, it would seem as though you were sitting there in that assembly and you are also a listener. So we had only those books. Later, some books came, Rabindranath Tagore's collection of talks, which were given the name Shanti Niketan. Early morning he used to give some talks to the students in Shanti Niketan, Vishwabharati. Then Aurobindo Ashram. All these things I've read. When we read, we should read and do manana, and we should apply to oneself. Immediately the reflection should take place. Have I understood it? Do I do this? So here what is being said? A pursuit with the intelligence which does not give rise to a simultaneous or consequent feeling of sublimity and freedom, purity and expansion is merely an intellectual exercise. If you are reading, listening, and it does not give you any sublimity, routinously, every day, you make your routine that every day I will read 2 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, I will listen to 1 lecture, or I will chant these things. Those are very good. Any kinds of austerity, discipline is good. But you are grasping with your intelligence. If you have used the intelligence in such a manner that it benefits you by giving rise to sublimity, purity, expansion, then only the listening or reading becomes useful, and it will help you in progressing. Otherwise not. So, okay, I think I will continue it in the next session. Today we will stop it. I also got immersed in these lines, and I think you also felt very absorbed. Yatraiva yatraiva mano madiyam tatraiva tatraiva tava swarupam yatraiva yatraiva shiro madiyam tatraiva tatraiva padadvayam te yatraiva yatraiva mano madiyam tatraiva tatraiva tava swarupam yatraiva yatraiva shiro madiyam tatraiva tatraiva padadvayam te. Jai Guru, Jai Guru, Jai Guru.